Hi, I'm Katie.
Hi,
Hi,
Katie.
Hi,
Katie.
Katie.
Hi, Katie.
So I knew how bad things were on Facebook when a week before Election Day in 2016, my friend messaged me in a panic telling me that there was a story on Facebook about how the top campaign advisor to Hillary Clinton was an Al Qaeda operative who had ties to the 9/11 hijackers.
That had to be so hard.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Maya.
Hi, Maya.
Okay. I just remember it was so tough, really. I'd posted it at night, thinking the algorithm would really work for me. And I smiled just like I was supposed to. And then I got up in the morning and there were only 5 likes.
That's so terrible.
I'm sorry. We're here for you. My name's Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
It's been really hard. First, I joined Facebook, and then all the kids left Facebook, and now I'm on Instagram, and they're all leaving for TikTok. And I mean, I think it might be me.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
I knew that I had a bit of a problem when I woke up and my hand really hurt. And I was trying to figure out why. And when I picked it up, I was still gripping my phone.
Oh my God.
And slept through the night. I had to literally pry my fingers away from the phone to hold it out. And that's when I knew I had a problem.
Wow.
Tonight on We're Speaking, social media was built to connect us, but now algorithms scrape every last bit of your data to anticipate what you want to see, what you want to hear, and what you want to buy. And it might be making us crazy and hurting our democracy at the same time. Is social media a global threat, or is it only dangerous in the wrong hands? Tonight, we're speaking with award-winning New York Times reporters Sheera Frenkel and Cecilia Kang about their new book, An Ugly Truth, inside Facebook's battle for domination. We all see something, and now it's time to say something. We're Speaking starts now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Lincoln Project's We're Speaking. I'm Lisa Senecal, and I am here with We're Speaking co-host, the amazing Maya May.
Hi, Lisa. I haven't seen you since the support group. It's good to see you.
It helped. It helped. I mean, if we can, find time to meet on social media to get support for, spending too much time meeting on social media, I think it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. And tonight, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Facebook. The good, the bad, mostly the bad, and how Facebook has put company over country. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
The ugly. It's mostly the ugly right there.
It stays awful every time I see it. Just not... The shock value of the douchebaggery does not go away.
That's him sailing away with our democracy, is what that is. And his maxim, Zuckerberg's maxim, is company over country, and it's described in the new book, An Ugly Truth.
Yeah, that's really impressive that you are an American company and your motto is company over country. And, Facebook's origins are equally ugly, just like Zuckerberg's tactics for creating and growing and expanding and monetizing the platform. You had to take a look at this.
What was FaceMash, and is it still up and running?
No, Congressman. FaceMash was a prank website that I launched in college in my dorm room. Before I started Facebook. There was a movie about this, or it said it was about this. It was of unclear truth. And the claim that FaceMash was somehow connected to the development of Facebook, it isn't. It wasn't.
Just
and
coincidental.
FaceMash isn't running.
The timing was the same, right? Just coincidental?
It was in 2003.
Okay.
And I took it down, and it actually has nothing to do with
You
Facebook.
put up pictures of two women and decide which one was the better, more attractive of the two. Is that right?
Congressman, that is an accurate description of the prank website that I made when I was a sophomore in college.
It's just a prank, a prank where you compare young women and decide which one's better looking. Like, there's nothing at all wrong with that, Senator. And the way he talks to him is with so much contempt. And what the hell is unclear truth? The movie was unclear truth. That's not a thing. You don't get to say that that's not what you did. It was in 2003. You started FaceMash in your dorm room. In 2003, Facebook started in your dorm room, and you want to sit there and tell a member of Congress that the two that both had face in the name and were social media sites had nothing to do with each other. Total coincidence.
Nothing at all. Yeah. The smugness there in his face was out of control. Basically, they started with taking down women, and now Facebook is taking down democracies. Yay. Just 15 years with Facebook, and America has gone from a solid relationship with democracy to it's complicated.
Yeah, and the algorithm, we're going to talk about it a lot tonight. The Facebook algorithm prioritizes discord.
Yeah, it's basically the algorithm. It's like inviting everyone to a party and then handing them boxing gloves on the way in and then locking the door once everyone's inside. Like, Facebook is basically a cage match.
Yeah, with Russia having the key to the cage. It's unbelievable what they allowed to happen on their platform. They weaponized the algorithm, paying way too little attention to security. And when they did pay attention to security and saw what was going on, like a massive Russian disinformation and interference operation into our elections, they decided, let's mark that private. We don't really need to talk about that.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Unregulated social media platforms are a clear and present danger to our democracy. Like, between the fake news pages and which are often published by foreign entities, by the way, these are radicalizing hundreds of thousands of people. So the radical groups they form and algorithms push all of this to the top of Facebook's infamous news feed. The news feed that it's so ubiquitous now but it wasn't always there. And the thing is, the news feed, it's by design. And online propaganda, it has led to offline violence, including the organizing of January 6th. We all saw that.
Yeah, and Facebook saw it. They watched the organizing happen. And once again, even after they saw what happened with Russia in the 2016 election, and the efforts again between 16 and 20, when the organizing for January 6th started and they saw it and they knew how violent it could become, they kept their mouths shut again and didn't inform U.S. intelligence, and the intelligence services were desperately trying to figure out what was going on. And Zuckerberg didn't stop it, and his number two, Sheryl Sandberg, she didn't, totally quiet about it too.
Yeah, so it's a little crazy to me. So tonight we're going to be examining all of that, and so we're bringing back our pro-democracy glossary so that you have key terms that you need to understand tonight. Behavioral advertising. This is basically Facebook's model, using data culled from our browsing history, online activity, and who knows what else to create targeted ads. So behavioral advertising, that's one.
Yep, and influence operations. Those are coordinated efforts to manipulate or corrupt public debate for a strategic goal. That would be what Russia did.
Yep. And all of this together, computational propaganda. That's the ways in which the use of algorithms, automation, which are often bots, and human curation are used over social media to purposely distribute misleading information. It's downright terrifying. It absolutely is. But social media can be a good thing. At the Lincoln Project, we're speaking. We use Facebook to connect with each other and grow our pro-democracy movement. So it's not all bad. Your engagement in that and other causes are things that make life better for people. And that's good.
It is good. There is good stuff that comes out. And while Zuckerberg and Sandberg have been slow, glacial to reform Facebook because they're making bank off the way they're doing business right now and don't seem to be terribly motivated by the loss of a democracy. Other social media platforms are taking steps to reform. Twitter has taken real steps to try to reform. So coming up shortly, we'll speak with the authors of the new book, An Ugly Truth Inside Facebook's Battle for Domination. New York Times reporters Cecilia, Kang and Sheera Frenkel. We're going to talk to them about the ongoing risk that Facebook poses and what, if anything, is going to finally motivate them to shift course.
Yeah, hopefully. It's hard to shift course when you're on a hoverboard like that, but hopefully they do. And first, before we get to that, we love hearing from you. And so we've seen social media connect people, destroy relationships, and influence elections. So we asked you, how has it impacted the ways you participate in American democracy?
And the first response we have from you tonight is from Barbara Swenson. On the plus side, social media has made me aware of and given me access to many more sources of information and groups I never knew existed. On the downside, it has exposed me to the ignorance and downright meanness of a staggering number of people. Terrifying.
And we have DK Stein, also from Facebook. Social media was intended to be a way to connect with friends, and it has destroyed friendships, families, and permitted and encouraged misinformation that spurs violence and hate. There is no place for this if we want to raise respectful children who are not mean or discriminatory towards others.
And Chris Morris, I've certainly learned a lot. These last 5 years have been a living American government class. The downside is I think that echo chambers and disinformation have created a massive amount of distrust in the media and government. It's ironic that parts of the media itself are sowing distrust in other parts of the media, but I guess it's profitable, so that's capitalism for you.
Yay. It's a total clusterfuck. I think that's what we call this. That's
so.
What it is.
I think that's the technical term. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the technical. I'm sure it is. We're going to discuss this as a community because We're Speaking isn't just a show. We know a ton of you are watching live right now. And so your input is crucial to building this movement. And you can use the hashtag We're Speaking to do that.
And tag us on Twitter at LPTV. I'm at LC Senecal, and Maya is at Maya on Stage. And keep the conversation going. You can also leave us a voicemail at 855-774-0126.
And in just a minute, we will welcome our guests, the co-authors of An Ugly Truth Inside Facebook's Battle for Domination, Sheera Frenkel and Cecilia Kang. But first, a message from the Lincoln Project, and we're going to reveal our first Oh, for Fuck's Sake Award nominee of the week.
Our first OFFS award nominee reminds us that if you're a woman, you don't have to go to Hollywood to be treated like meat. Started in Mark Zuckerberg's dorm room as a wee app to objectify and judge young women at Harvard, Facebook has grown into a hellscape online community where not only is your personal data for sale, but so is your democracy. Facebook is nominated for 2 categories this evening: Best Online Collaboration with a Hostile Foreign Power in a U.S. Election, and Best Supporting Bad Actor in Organizing an Insurrection. Mark Zuckerberg, you must be so proud. But you shouldn't be.
The people that hated us before are hating us hard right now. But what I have found that's hopeful is that there's been a sleeping giant of voters who haven't felt valued, and we're igniting in them a spirit of, is my government trying to take away a fundamental right of mine? Maybe I need to pay attention to this. And if we can ignite that and wake up some of those souls to be participating in their democracy, then that's awesome.
What's happening with the president?
Well, his golf game is just incredible. He's busting his driver, knocking the pins down with his iron and putting like a wall man.
It's not even about COVID. Why can't we force uppity people to take Thorazine? Like, I don't like your attitude. You need some tranquilizers.
Dr. Fauci looks like the laces outside of a football that I'd like to kick. What did we do to Saddam Hussein? What did we do to, people? I mean, these people swung from their neck in front of the world for killing far less people.
We're not attacking the vaccine, never have. We don't judge anyone who takes it.
This is a happy and inclusive movement. We even want to free Britney.
I don't care what you think about fraudulent Sleepy Joe. He's a sex trafficking, demon-possessed mongrel.
Did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020?
Real quick.
Can you answer the question? Did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020?
I'm answering questions. Don't
is
really
this
feel any
is
obligation
this
to answer anything
an uncomfortable
of you.
question for you?
This is the party of Donald Trump. If you think otherwise, you're in for a rude awakening.
Welcome back to We're Speaking.
I've seen way more Lindsey Graham than I need to see for maybe the rest of my life. We are joined now by New York Times award-winning investigative journalist Sheera Frenkel, who covers cybersecurity, and Cecilia, Kang, technology and regulatory policy reporter.
You are the authors of the jaw-dropping and deeply troubling new book, An Ugly Truth Inside Facebook's Battle for Domination. Hello, Sheera. Cecilia, welcome to We're Speaking.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
It's great. Sheera, my first question is for you. So in reading the book, Mark Zuckerberg clearly has access to over a quarter of the world's information. He can predict and even control our behavior with an algorithm, which makes him arguably more powerful than any president of the world and with less oversight. So if data is king, does that make Zuckerberg the supreme emperor?
Well, one thing we learned about Mark Zuckerberg when we were reporting this book is one of his first insights was that data would make him really powerful. He was still a college student at Harvard when he realized that a person who controlled data would ultimately wield power. And I think that was important for us to learn because it wasn't money that seemed to motivate him. It wasn't, political office. It was just raw power. I think another way I like to think of it is that Mark Zuckerberg currently has access to more people through his platform than the Catholic Church has had, even during the height of its power. And so there's no doubt that he is extremely influential. The decisions he makes at Facebook impact a number of people, and that the algorithms that they use to decide what ranks on Facebook's newsfeed do play a role in what we see and therefore what we think and talk about.
Yeah, the amount of power is really staggering. Cecilia, you write in the book that Zuckerberg believed Facebook had, and probably still has, greater power to change history than countries do. Is he wrong?
Well, Facebook is actually pretty analogous to its own nation state. It's sort of its own government. It definitely wields so much power over our politics and our culture and society. And, Mark Zuckerberg is so key to understanding Mark Zuckerberg. And we were so stunned and surprised by a lot of our discoveries about him in that he really sought that kind of impact and historical legacy of having that kind of power, like a Roman emperor. He really was super interested in Caesar Augustus, for example, and tried to emulate him. And he sees his role in the world and in history like a historic figure, like Caesar Augustus. And he understands that the power of the company means that it not only, that is historic in terms of its reach with 3.4 billion people across these apps, but that he's doing something different. And he oftentimes talks about having impact and that being the main goal. Where things go wrong is that he and Sheryl Sandberg don't think about the next thing, which is, what does that impact result in? What are the consequences of that? And that's really what we explore in our book and show how that incredible drive for impact and power has resulted in a lot of collateral damage.
Yeah, a lot of collateral damage, meaning actual lives have been lost, and which is incredibly scary. So Facebook is based in the US, but it's clearly a global company with its offices everywhere, with users everywhere. Just following up with you, Cecilia, is it naive to think the US can regulate how they run their company?
It's a great question. I think what's happening right now in Washington is pretty extraordinary in terms of the amount of interest in regulating Facebook and other big tech companies. And nothing is really uniting Republicans and Democrats quite like that shared goal. But actually, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of what that would look like, it's really tough. Like, we have a First Amendment. It's really hard to curb speech. And it's really hard to curb speech in a way for government to curb speech at a private company in a way that doesn't make not only Americans uncomfortable with it, but actually violate our Constitution. So there's that. There's a lot of interest in antitrust and actually breaking up these companies, but a lot of questions as to what that really means. The laws right now in the US are about a century old when it comes to antitrust and other laws as well. I mean, they were created for the oil and steel trusts. So yes, there's a lot of energy. It's just going to take a ton of work, but definitely the biggest impact would come from the US. We're seeing there's already regulation in Europe and other countries, but it hasn't quite had the kind of global effect that I think the US would have in leading on regulation.
You both alluded to this already in our conversation. One of the things that's consistently most disturbing in the book is the character and psychology of Mark Zuckerberg. Sheera, in the book, you describe Zuckerberg as like not getting it when it comes to like the outrage over sexism that was happening inside Facebook, or the outrage that users had when suddenly he was sharing massive amounts of their private data when he had, it wasn't in the terms of service, but he had given them the impression that private data was going to remain private. And, images were shared without people's permission. What accounts for, it seems like a real lack of empathy. And then compounding that, does Sheryl Sandberg share this same deficit that Mark Zuckerberg seems to have?
It's interesting. I thought the way you started that question was really fascinating because often Mark doesn't get it. I think part of the problem here is that, he's led a very specific kind of life. He grew up in upstate New York. He ends up going to Exeter, one of the most prestigious boarding schools in the United States. He then ends up at Harvard. He's in his early 20s when his company becomes one of the most successful companies in Silicon Valley. That's an extraordinary life, but one that is, ultimately quite privileged and quite sheltered. And so when things do confront him, whether, there's one scene in the book where he's talking to a reporter and the reporter confides in him that he's gay and that he shares that with friends and family, but he wouldn't want that to be on Facebook because he's got friends and family in other parts of the world where that's not legal. He cannot legally be gay there. And so, he raises this issue of like, well, sometimes we need our private lives to be private. Sometimes it isn't great for all of our data to be shared globally in this transparent way that you, Mark Zuckerberg, envision. And Mark is really stunned by that. He can't quite seem to comprehend because that's so different from his lived experience, right? I think Sheryl Sandberg is different. Sheryl Sandberg, in some ways, she shared a lot with him. She also went to Harvard. She's also extremely successful at a young age. But, she seems to have gotten out of Silicon Valley. She worked in Washington. She had friends in New York who worked in finance. She had more life experience and more connection to people in Washington who probably exposed her to other things. One thing we ultimately show in this book, that despite her lived experience, she's often not able to persuade Mark Zuckerberg of changing his mind. He ultimately, he's the one that calls the shots. And even if he doesn't have that personal knowledge of situations or that lived experience that makes him see around corners and predict how people will use his products badly, he still calls the shot on what happens at Facebook.
Just to follow up on that. Sorry, go ahead, Cecilia.
Oh, no, I would just also add that what we show in the book is she doesn't push very hard often on even these issues that she personally feels very strongly about. For example, Mark's position that free expression is so important that he would even allow Holocaust denial on the site. And he says this. And she was personally so offended by this, but she would only push so far. She would only push so far, especially when it came to Trump. And when it came to decisions on his speech and when he violated rules that the Facebook has for every other user except for Trump, because Facebook had carved out an exemption for him and other political leaders. And what we show is that she was supposed to, in the beginning when they met in 2008, be the balance in that relationship. She was supposed to be the sort of adult in the room. And many people internally told us that they were quite disappointed that she wasn't able to be that balance and that sort of other side to Mark, and to make sure that his decision, that there was a check on him.
Yeah, and part of it isn't it because she was brought in to oversee the business model, the ad revenue, and so they were raking the money in. So in theory, she was doing her job. And part of her job, it seems, is to rewrite their history, to make it sound like they're all about, oh, we want to connect people. That's what it's all about. When really they're just after the ad money, which seems pretty authoritarian to me. Are they both autocrats? Is that what we're looking at?
It's a good question. I'd love to ask Mark that, right, Cecilia? It'd be interesting to hear what Mark himself would answer. He certainly admires autocrats. I mean, one of the figures he admires most in history is Caesar Augustus. He's quite obsessed with Caesar Augustus, to the point where he reads every book that comes out about him. He goes on his honeymoon and he visits, Rome. He certainly has an interest in autocrats, but I don't know how he would see that himself.
And I'm so glad you brought up the business model, because that is really what we tried to show in this book, is that it's really important to understand that there are two very powerful engines at Facebook. One is the creation of this business model that feeds off of attention and engagement and all the data that's basically poured into their reservoir of data that they can sell to advertisers. And that is absolutely linked to the technology that prioritizes attention and engagement and gets things at the top of your news feed, that makes you want to like things, that all is about getting you to come back more and stay longer. And those two very powerful dual engines have created this incredibly big company. And Sheryl Sandberg, as you said, was incredibly successful on her side of the thing, of her side of the company, which was building that business model, which is at this point unstoppable. It's so compelling for advertisers, for millions of advertisers and brands around the world, as well as political campaigns.
Right. There really isn't anything else that has the reach that Facebook does. So even now we're all in a situation where even if you hate it, you have to participate with it. And
begrudgingly.
Yeah. Zuckerberg seems to, he's obviously been then hyper-focused since the very beginning in his dorm room when Face Mash was also a thing that he was creating. But his drive was really to get users to divulge increasing amounts and degrees of that personal information. And as you were just saying, the amount of time that they're spending on Facebook, the whole privacy and security thing seems to have not, and maybe part of it is because, like the example you gave about why someone who is gay might not want that to be available publicly on Facebook, because they might, be in other countries where that can get you killed. all the privacy and security measures seem to be reactive. Something happens and they're forced to put another measure in place. Do you think they're learning anything? Is there anything more proactive being done? Or is it always, oops, they trusted me, dumb fucks, as Zuckerberg is quoted in the book, say, you're doing it to yourselves. And if you're dumb enough to do it, that's really not our problem.
I didn't mean to laugh when you asked that question. It just was striking to me because someone earlier today called me from Washington and really had the same exact question in relation to the current battle between the White House and Facebook. They said to me, we just read your book and we can't help but feel that, they've always been reactive rather than proactive. And once again, here with COVID misinformation, we're seeing the same pattern repeat itself again. So whether or not they can learn, I don't know. I would like to think that they could change. Any company can change. But we're seeing that up until the present day, they're not taking those extra steps. We reported just earlier this week that a year ago, their own data scientists came to them and said, we should get a handle on COVID misinformation. We should start tracking it and measuring it. There's a lot of anti-vaccine activism on Facebook, and we don't have what they call prevalence data, which is this idea that they want to know how prevalent it is. How many people overall are seeing vaccine misinformation compared to accurate information about vaccines and the pandemic. And their data scientists said, if you want us to start tracking this, we need more resources, hire more people, give us a bigger budget, make it a priority. And once again, it's a situation where they aren't told no, but they're not given the things they ask for. And here we are a year later with the White House saying, look, vaccine skepticism, people who don't want the vaccine, is a huge problem. The number one thing people cite when they say why we won't get the vaccine is Facebook. Tell us how many people are seeing vaccine misinformation. And Facebook can't give them that answer because they don't have it. And the reason they don't have it is that they didn't go looking for it.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about their unwillingness to go looking for the information that they should be, because if you know it, then you are maybe ethically bound to reveal it to authorities who should know. So we are going to be back after a quick break and talk more with our two guests tonight. First, we're going to take a look at our next nominee for our Oh for Fuck's Sake Award.
Our next OFFS Award nominee goes to Parler, a microblogging platform so full of hate that even Amazon won't host them. They burst onto the scene with racism and misogyny so sophisticated they named it after the French verb parler, to speak. But it's lowbrow, so they pronounce it Parler. Only hate from the Parler region of the internet can be called Parler. But no one is serving them up at awards parties this year because their site's offline. Congrats on being irrelevant.
We can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers in Nazi Germany. And this is exactly the type of abuse that Nancy Pelosi is talking about.
In no way, shape, or form did I compare mask mandates or forced vaccination or vaccine passports to the Holocaust.
Well, they're burning the house down. Please protect yourself.
Vice President speaking.
This is an embarrassment. If you count the legal votes, I easily win. What the fuck?
Have some faith, I'll make you a believer.
Welcome back, everybody. We're back with our guests, New York Times reporters and authors of the new book, An Ugly Truth, inside Facebook's battle for domination, Sheera, Frenkel, and Cecilia Kang.
So right before the break, we were talking about security and the lack thereof at Facebook. The Facebook executives, at one point in your book, you describe them being really upset with the security division for basically doing their job and doing an investigation and discovering the Russian operations that were going on prior to the 2016 election. And a quote from the book is, "You can't be obligated to disclose what you don't know," and, which is an amazing thing to tell a security team, like, please stop learning things that you're supposed to be finding. And if you do, please don't tell us. It took them a year to turn over what they knew to U.S. intelligence. Is Facebook just playing a don't ask, don't tell with foreign interference in the democracy? And do you think that's still going on?
You know, I think there was a telling moment, at least for me as a reporter, when I interviewed someone about Alex Stamos, who was then the head of Facebook security. And they said, you know, ultimately executives, many of them were upset with Alex Stamos for being proactive, for going and looking for Russian election interference without telling his bosses or getting their sign off. And I was baffled by that. And I said, why? And he said, well, if you don't know, you can't disclose it. But the minute he found something, he put them in a position of having to make a decision on what they were going to say to Congress, what they were going to say to law enforcement agencies. So I'll note a couple things. One is that Facebook did talk to the FBI fairly early on, just before the November 2016 elections, to disclose what they had found. But after that, you know, months go by after the election where they're finding things, they're uncovering more and more of what the Russian hackers did with those hacked emails, and they're just kind of sitting on it. They published this white paper in March of 2017, and despite their own security team pushing for there to be an entire section there about Russia and what Russia is capable of doing, executives cut it out. And they basically have this PR strategy, we lay it out in our book, of delay, deny, deflect. When they do ultimately come out with what they know about Russia, and this is at this point September 2017, almost a year after the elections, they try to downplay it. They only give a sliver of what they found. They try to make it seem like the Russian IRA ads were pretty equal and not really favoring one candidate over another. And we now know that to not be the case. We now know that those Russian ads were extremely divisive and polarizing and largely created to drive voters' outrage at Hillary Clinton as a potential candidate for president. And so you see them even then at that moment where they're trying to kind of, you know, go public in some part with what they know, not really being really, you know, fully transparent about what they have.
Yeah, the ads were clearly meant to take advantage of all of the, the racial divisions and everything in our country. And people were just like at each other's throats, not realizing that these were troll farms, Russian troll farms that had created all of these ads. It's a little insane. And to me, in your book, the part was the most insane is that Facebook doesn't fact check political ads. How?
Yeah.
Why is this allowed?
Yeah. I think it's really important for people to understand the philosophy behind that. And it's all from Mark Zuckerberg. From his youngest days, first arriving in Silicon Valley, he's really adopted a very libertarian approach to speech, which is sort of basically there should be complete free expression. And he really believes strongly that more speech will drown out bad speech. So when it comes to political speech, including political ads, he believes that the public will fact check. He thinks that political speech is the most scrutinized speech that there is out there. So if a political candidate like President Trump, the former president, or other political leaders around the world say something in an ad or organically on their pages, his thought is that, or his belief is that there will be so much pushback if there are lies, if there is misinformation, etc., that the truth will surface to the top. What we found actually, and this is really important to understand, and I should say Mark Zuckerberg outlined this all in a speech in Georgetown in 2019. What we found that's really important, and we hope that readers take away, is that it's fine and well to have that philosophy, but the technology itself is actually geared to really promote the most emotive speech. And oftentimes that is the most rancorous speech. It is misinformation. It is harmful speech. And so if you have a technology, a machine that's prioritizing that kind of speech, then your philosophies on speech really have to be, are all fall under that, go through that filter.
Yeah, it does seem like a conflict of interest really on their part. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, maybe this is what he genuinely believes, but it really sounds like bullshit. Because
bullshit. I call bullshit.
He's obviously not a dumb guy. And so to say, well, I just have a libertarian view of speech, and so all speech should be out there. But he's picking and choosing through the algorithm what is going to get amplified. So he's not, this isn't libertarian. It's not just anybody has a equal voice out there to speak. He is making some of that speech louder and more accessible and presented more often to certain groups of people. So is this just something he likes to say because it absolves him of responsibility for what he's doing? Or does he just choose not to really think about this and pretend, he's got himself convinced that this is his philosophy?
I think he's certainly convinced of it. It was an idea that was introduced to him when he first moved to Silicon Valley by people he considers mentors and investors in Facebook. It's also, as you suggested, a very, very convenient philosophy. It is much easier for him to do business in the way he wants to do business if he can adapt this as his belief on free speech. I'm really, really glad you mentioned the algorithms, because there's someone much, much smarter than I that succinctly put it. It's in our book. Her name is Renee DiResta, as freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. And so if you take this position that, well, we should let people say whatever they need to say because it's really important in a democracy for elected leaders to be heard, fine. But then when you take an algorithm like the one Facebook uses, where really emotive content rises to the top, the things that make us angry and sad and happy and outraged, people engage with that. And so that rises to the top of your newsfeed. You see it first thing when you log in. You're more likely to click on it, either with a smiley face button or anything else. And, you're feeding their algorithm that information that is interesting to you, so more people see it. And so, that's where I really get stuck on Mark Zuckerberg's ideas. Is I see where he's coming from on some level in terms of elected leaders and free speech and the importance of that platform. I can't understand how he then takes what he knows about his own company's algorithms and squares that hole with it.
Yeah, it sounds like the algorithm is gonna get us day in and day out. But I also feel like it's like in Roger Rabbit, where Jessica Rabbit says, "But I was drawn this way. It's not my fault."
But they're not. Sorry, this is my thing though, right? Because algorithms are just equations. They're sets that human beings input, and they can always decide to change them. I think that's what's key here, is that, I don't want people to think an algorithm is some set equation you learned in algebra class and it always has to be written the same way. No, algorithms are ever changing. It's what you input into them that they value and rank at the top. So if you tell them that emotive content is most important, that's what they surface. But if you tell them, no, actually, we're going to uprank, factual news sources. We're going to decide that certain news sources are more factual and accurate than others. And we're going to make sure people see those ahead of others, which is, by the way, something Facebook did during the 2020 elections. They felt this is an important moment in democracy. We're going to uprank legitimate news sources on the left and the right. It was interesting to me that they didn't choose to make that change permanent. A month after the elections, they reversed course on that decision, and we all got back the old newsfeed. But how different would things be if they had stayed the course, and if they had decided that permanently they were going to downrank or place lower in people's newsfeed news sources that were repeatedly cited by fact checkers as getting things wrong?
Yeah. That's so helpful to hear that it is the algorithm and we are responsible for programming it correctly. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I have so many more questions, so I hope we're going to be able to have you back. I know you do too, Lisa, I'm sure.
Yeah, so many more. Thank you so much to both of you. We really appreciate the time that you've given us here tonight. And I really encourage everybody to read this incredible book. It's really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your great questions.
Thanks. Thank you. Oh, wow. Cecilia, Kang, and Sheera Frenkel, absolutely brilliant, eye-opening. I do have 1,000 more questions, though. And I was like, don't go yet. I need to find out if we're going to be okay. That's always going to be my question. And speaking of whether things will be okay or not, we have a clip from the breakdown. You can't miss this show, guys. It's always so good with our friends Rick Wilson and Tara Setmeyer. They're always up for some fiery discussion of the latest and breaking political news. So go ahead and check out this clip.
And that's what we're going to do in 2022, guys. We're going to go after a lot of these bad guys. We're going to break their brains. We're going to go after Trump and continue to mess with him. So there's a division in the Republican Party. We're going to go after McConnell because he hates Donald Trump breathing down his thick, wattled neck. We're going to go after all these people, and we're going to do what we do best, which is to make bad guys suffer.
He said wattled neck.
Very good description.
You can catch the breakdown every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But now it's time for our next Offs nominee.
Our final Oh For Fuck's Sake award nominee is Trump's new social media platform, Getter. Because what else would you name a site devoted to admiring an admitted sexual assaulter and created by a notorious deadbeat dad and Trump slobberer, Jason Miller? Getter. You might think the price of admission is your dignity, self-respect, morals, reputation, or soul, but it will only cost you being personally violated by hackers. But come on, if you like Trump, being personally violated is entertainment, right? And here's a tip for those of you attending the after party. If you see Jason Miller there, you might want to cover your drink.
Donald Trump is telling reporters he'll be back in the White House in August. Reinstated. The election overturned. President. Again. Trump thinks the big lie will put him back in the big job. Yeah, Donald, we have some bad news. Not happening. But the Lincoln Project is here to help. If you miss the White House that much, here's how to get back there. Visit the official website of your Congresswoman, Lois Frenkel. Select Help Center, then Tours and Tickets. Next, select the tour that you're interested in. The White House. Enter your travel dates and contact information. Make sure to submit your request to Representative Frenkel no less than 21 days in advance. And remember, White House tours may be subject to last-minute cancellation. Plan ahead. If you need further assistance, Donald, just reach out to the Lincoln Project. We are always there for you.
Welcome back to We're Speaking. We've been going down a rabbit hole of social media in this episode. Almost feels like we've more like gone down like a manhole into a sewer system, but it is not all bad. One of the really good things to come out of social media is that it connects us with all of you, our We're Speaking community.
Yes. Speaking truth on social media is so important, but it's only one part of building a movement. So we asked you, how are you taking the fight offline, not the literal fight, the metaphorical fight, getting involved in your community and showing up for America?
Yeah, here are some of your responses. Julie Withoff, volunteering in a local neighbor-to-neighbor relational organizing project to elect Democrats up and down the ballot, inform Democrats about new voter suppression laws in our state, knocking doors for local candidates, talking to everyone I know is open to listening about the threat facing our democracy.
And we have Donna D. Genslinger also on Facebook. Email my representatives, write postcards to voters, attend local rallies, teach my child. I'm a caregiver at home, so my ability to get out and help is limited.
And Wendy Angle Murphy wrote, I held a hashtag Good Trouble Vigil last night in Rockville, Maryland, a DC suburb. I expected 5 to 10 people. We had over 60, including kids begging for us to make sure that when they're old enough to vote, that it will count. The biggest question was, how do we help make that happen for the kids, and also other important issues?
And Chris Brown, also from Facebook, I dress up as a suffragette and walk around town with signs protesting various aspects of voting restriction. It started with DeJoy and the mail-in vote and has continued from there. It's a rural Nevada Republican town, so that's fun. I also repeatedly call my senators to make sure they know we need to get rid of the filibuster. I send money to groups and a variety of politicians that support voting rights, women's rights, and racial justice. Yeah.
It is amazing how active all of you are getting. We're really moving it from these conversations online to doing offline, taking offline action, whether you're protesting dressed as a suffragette or you're organizing in your community and having those good trouble conversations. Mm-hmm. It's so incredibly important. And thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
It's doing it.
It's great. It's inspiring too, because we see that, people, for the woman who's a caretaker at home and doesn't have a ton of time, still does her part. And so I think what's really great is that we can see that all of us are doing our part, even if it's like 5 minutes or, like I said, putting on the outfit and strolling through town. That sounds like a lot of fun. I think I might want to do that because that one sounds fun.
We might need some photos sent in from that community member. We would like to see some images of you dressed up as a suffragette and protesting. That would be pretty great. Yeah. The other thing that is pretty great is that we every week get to announce our winner of the Oh for Fuck's Sake Awards, and we are going to do that right now.
Our OFFS Award winner tonight. What a surprise. Facebook. Ha! And we assure you that they are definitely the real winners. They definitely didn't use unbridled access to our data via Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram to serve us ads with misleading and outright false news in an effort to sway the OFFS Award voters. No, they earned this award from the minute they stepped onto the scene, aggressively taking down their peers, so that in the end, this monopoly is the only one left standing. You giving your data to me? Yeah. Are you giving your data to me? Well, I'm the only one here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's so fucking good.
That's my De Niro.
Oh my God. The whole thing, the outfit, the accent. It's God, that was good. That was perfect. Not just, you were like the whole package in that. And then for it to be Facebook, which of course it's Facebook, who would end up winning the Oh for Fuck's Sake Award. Man.
Yeah.
So
I felt like I had to go into witness protection program to talk about Facebook. It was like a disguise. I was like, because they know. I feel like they know everything I'm doing because they do. Yeah. Read the book and you'll see they know everything. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll keep you up at night, but it's important that we all know it. And we know Facebook is not going to get better on their own. So we're not just speaking, we're also doing. And here are 3 things that all of you can be doing. Social media literacy. It is so important to understand how the algorithms work to keep you connected to your device. They want you to stay there as long as possible, and pissing you off is a really good way to do that. So know what to look for. Is it a bot? Is it a troll? Is it a 12-year-old?
It's probably
or maybe it's a bot. Maybe it's a 12-year-old to troll you. We've got to get smart about what this content is that is coming at us. So learn how to fact check, cross-reference information, so you don't get duped by news created by a Russian troll farm that is created to manipulate you in the very worst of ways.
Yeah, don't get manipulated, y'all. And when you come across this information, when you see something, say something. That is so important. It's time to report this kind of activity. Also, ask your local reps where they stand on Facebook's responsibility to our democracy, because if they're out there destroying it, maybe they should be a part of repairing it. I don't know. And ask for algorithms that create consensus, because as the authors mentioned tonight, that can actually happen. So about consensus, not control.
Yep. And use social media to connect the way we're connecting now. This show goes out on all these different social media platforms. All of you are so active in communicating with the Lincoln Project and our show. It is bringing Americans together across the political spectrum to really engage in a pro-democracy movement. So look for more and more opportunities to connect with one another, for Q&As with experts and discussions and community engagement and legit information. Our democracy only works when we do. We've got to work hard for it. So thank all of you again, our amazing We're Speaking community, for working with all of us at the Lincoln Project.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. And join us next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about companies that are using the money we spend with them to fund fascists. That's great. Yeah, if they think they can sneak that past us and quietly slip money into the campaign coffers of those actively working against our democracy, well, we'll teach them to give that another thought.
Yeah, they definitely need to reconsider what they're doing. The Lincoln Project is here to help them. And we're going to talk about that next week. So we will see you here again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific. And thanks so much for being with us. We will see you next Wednesday.
Good night.
America is the only country founded on an idea, the radical idea that citizens could govern themselves. It was called the American Experiment because there was no reason to believe it would work. A republic, if you can keep it. Every generation has been called to defend and renew the promise of America. For some, it was on the battlefield. For others, it was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Now, the battle has come to the steps of the Capitol itself. Democracy is under assault like no time since 1860. We have a choice. Look away or stand up and fight. It's not about conservative or liberal. It's about freedom versus autocracy. We didn't choose this moment, but history has chosen us. Which side are you on?
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.